And a very good morning, and welcome to TJN Live, the Jesus Network Live, and we are here in the beautiful Drake Park in Bend, Oregon. And with me is Cindy Pasco of the Partnership to End Poverty. And Cindy, glad to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to TJN Live.
Thank you.
Now, the reason we're talking to you from Drake Park this morning is because it's a beautiful park, and we all enjoy recreating here, but some people call this home, and because they can't afford to live in their own home, and it's especially in the colder winter months here in Central Oregon, that's a problem. And Cindy is with the Partnership to End Poverty, and they've also helped to put together something called the 10-year plan to end homelessness, and we're going to be talking about that a bit this morning. So Cindy, as we look at the problem of poverty and homelessness in Central Oregon, it's a growing concern, isn't it?
It is. It's been a concern for a lengthy amount of time, but as our economy has taken a nosedive, if you will, and not come back up out of its stalled economy, it's made it tough. More and more people that have been living in poverty or were at risk of homelessness have actually destabilized in their family lives, lost their homes, whether it's been through foreclosure or lack of employment, illness, accident.
Now, I was at a meeting with you the other day, and it was interesting to know that some of the people who have been donating to area food banks are actually now having to come to those same food banks for help.
Yes, we're seeing a really sharp rise in that. And it's the same thing with other volunteer efforts. I know we have a Project Connect coming up pretty soon, and this is our 5th year, and we've had about over 600 volunteers each year, and each year we've seen more and more and more of those volunteers that are coming back to either access the services, or they're coming to volunteer for part of the day to receive services. So we've watched that same shift.
Now, Project Connect, could you explain to our viewers what that is and the time and place and where that will be held?
Project Connect is on September 24th this year from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It's, as I said, our 5th year in doing this. And it's not one entity. It's really multiple entities together. So it's over 130 agencies, organizations, school kids to grandparents, faith-based as well as business people and service agencies, medical and dental, just showing up, doing what they do best in life, which is maybe it's pulling teeth or giving haircuts or just loving on people. So there'll be food, as I said, medical, dental, credit pulls, credit counseling, financial, denturist, vision, anything that a person might need in their life because they're struggling to make ends meet or they're homeless. And that does include very limited utility and rental assistance.
Now, Project Connect was so named because it wants to connect the people that are the agencies that provide services with the people that need them, and so it's Project Connect. Now, one of the things we're excited about is Project Connect this year. We're going to be broadcasting live with EVM Media and Operation Eagle's Wings and the Jesus Network from 9 to 4. And if you're viewing this, we do want you to know that we will respect the privacy of those people that are there, and we won't put their picture on TV or the internet if they do not want to be interviewed. But we want to be there to talk to the agency providers and talk throughout the day about what they're seeing, the need, can they fulfill the need, how are they coming short, and then we're going to hopefully talk to some people who are in need of services and hear their stories. And so we're pretty excited about being able to do that. So we'll be there from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you missed the live feed, you'll be able to catch it live or catch it on tape delay on our website, or also on YouTube. So,
and I think it's important you're coming. It's really important that you're coming. It's important that people know that they can come, that there's not a sense of shame in needing services, because most of us have needed services. In fact, all of us have needed help sometime in our life. And so this is a chance to get help, and it's also a chance to volunteer, maybe pay back all those great blessings we've had in our lives.
How serious? Let's take a look at some of the numbers. We're noticing, and everybody probably is aware, that the problem is growing because of the declining economy, fewer jobs, more people are on unemployment that probably have been on unemployment for the first time in their lives. What are we seeing as far as the numbers? Can you share some of those with us as far as the growing problem?
I can't give you the exact numbers. I just know that, and part of that is that we watch those numbers on an ongoing basis. We know that that's increasing. We're right at about a 12% unemployment for all three Deschutes, Jefferson, and Cook counties right now. We know that many people that have been on those unemployment rolls no longer are. They've either had to drop off because they've been on too long, or they've given up. So part of that is it's easy to say, you know, these numbers are growing, but even if they're looking stalled out, it's often because of those types of factors. We've also had many people move from the area because they weren't able to maintain their employment. So I don't want to give a doom and gloom, but I do want to say that it's really something that we need to address if we care about our community.
One of the things that was interesting to me is that the demand for service from area food banks is rising. And I don't have the numbers here right in front of me, but typically nonprofit agencies have noticed a decline in revenue from donations because fewer people can afford to donate, yet the demand for services is up, and that creates a perfect storm for them, where the increase for services is so high, and I'm sure in many cases donors are now coming for help. So what are you hearing from area food banks? Or is there really a stretch there?
It really is. Many food banks, and I want to say most of the food banks, are experiencing about a 50% cut in their donations, their food donations. The federal government has had to cut what they're giving and what's available as far as excess food commodities, as well as, you know, the donations that you're getting from the households in the area. And then demand is up anywhere from 50, in some cases 200%. So there's a really tight need, especially for food banks in this local area.
And we were involved in a meeting the other day, the Ben Faith Network. I love to see agencies coming together and churches coming together and I know it's been going on quite for some time here in Central Oregon, where agencies are working together to help. But it's very nice to see that really expand as well, where agencies are helping one another.
It is. And I think we're all really getting the fact that as the resources diminish, that we need to leverage every single penny that we have. We need to leverage all of the resources that we have. And the only way to do that is by working in collaboration.
Okay. If you'd like to call and ask Cindy a question, you can do that at 541-323-2882. That's 541-323-2882. And we'll put you online, and you can ask the question. Now, Cindy, you're helping to develop the Central Oregon 10-year plan to end homelessness. Now, I have to admit, when this was first announced more than a year ago, people looked at that and thought, wow, that is a lofty goal. That's a big chunk to bite off, isn't it?
It is. But if you don't aim high, I mean, it is like that saying, you know, if you aim high, at least you're going to achieve more. It's better to have a goal that seems a little lofty, and in fact probably is lofty, but at least it's something that we're shooting for. And you know, in a perfect world, there wouldn't be homelessness. I mean, I think we'd be able to see the aspects in a person's life that when somebody needs help, and get there in a preventative way rather than having to deal with this afterwards. And homelessness is very complex, just as society is complex. So I don't want to be Pollyanna about this or assume that, you know, we're going to be able to end homelessness in 10 years. But we can sure try, and we are ending homelessness, even if it's one person at a time.
So the 10-year plan to end homelessness, in fact, we have copies of it right here. Could you overview some of the high points for us in this plan? I know the draft plan was put together in July of this year. Can you highlight just some of the high points of the plan?
The components?
Yeah.
The components for the 10-year plan consist of multiple goals. So there's goals for youth in being able to provide shelter and wraparound services for them. There are goals for hoping to prevent discharge into homelessness from parole foster care from the hospitals. There's goals for supporting the shelter beds that we already have through zoning and policy changes, and leveraging the cooperative work. There's goals in covering and filling service gaps, because we know that if you're trying to move between medical and shelter and utility, perhaps child care or services for your children, that there's gaps in there. And so there's gap filling measures in this 10-year plan. There's better counting, better accountability. There's also in this strengthened ability to use the data and collect data that we need desperately in order to validify and, I guess I want to say, legitimize what we're saying all along, and to be able to track progress, and or to say we haven't made progress. I mean, it's a chance to be really transparent and really real about what's happening in our community. And the goals around communication, if you look at all of the people that are involved in serving, from DHS to food banks to social services, you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of agencies. It's very, very difficult to have good communication between us, let alone good communication to a person who has never been in this process. I work in this every day, and I have a lot of trouble keeping current on the changes. Somebody can have money one day and not the next. So by the time I send a client over to an agency, they may be out of that money, or they may be closed. They had to close early. And so it's important that we keep updated in all of that. So there's components of improving the communication as well.
This also would serve, I would think, to create a benchmark for we know what the problem is now, and it's easier to achieve a goal when you know what the target is. And so I would assume that this would give us some good data on what exactly the problem is, other than, gee whiz, we have a problem with homelessness. Okay, how bad is it?
That's true. We spent over 2 years researching our communities, our 3 counties and all 8 communities. We interviewed everyone from police departments to hospital, all frontline workers. We interviewed homeless people that were experiencing homelessness. What are the barriers they're facing? What are the realities on the street, or what are the realities in those levels of poverty that just precede homelessness? What are the realities for youth when they're on the street? What caused them to go onto the street? What's going to help? We were very, very thorough, and as careful as we could be. We conducted town halls in every community in July, I think, of last year. We were very thorough in being real with, the fact that we've got not even enough beds to house 3% of our homeless. So that's just starting off from there. So I think any good plan looks at where you're at and where you need to go, and is realistic about the resources. There's no way that we can reach all of these goals with the resources that we have right now. So part of the strategy is to look at new ways collaboratively to get new resources into our community.
Time to think out of the box.
Absolutely.
Now, the anticipated completion date of this 10-year plan to end homelessness was this summer. Where are we in getting this plan finalized? I know we have a draft version now. Is it ready to be presented to the public?
It's almost ready to be presented to the public. I think that the launch date will be sometime in October or November. We don't have the exact date picked yet, because part of that is getting all of our public and elected officials together, setting everything up. So it'll be a very public presentation, very, I want to say, media driven. So that's that piece to it. This draft that we have right here, there's very, very minor changes that need to be put in place in it, and then it'll be bound and then come complete with pictures.
Now, does the plan sort of define the problem and then propose solutions?
It does. It gives directions. So the plan isn't just a piece of paper that says, okay, here's what we want. And let's make an example. We need to add 20 more beds in Bend, and we need to add 10 more shelter beds in Redmond, etc. Well, that's all really great for us to say. That's in a perfect world. But what it really is about is saying that is what we need to do. That is the goal in order to meet the need. But let's say I'm in Redmond and I'm part of the group working on that, and I do live and work in Redmond. So it's easier for me to say, I really care about my community as well as I care about the whole region, but I want to do what's best for my community, and I think all of us feel that way. So for us, 20 beds or even 10 beds may be very unrealistic. Maybe it's really only going to be 8. But Redmond needs to make that decision as they begin to work through this. So what we're saying is that this is not you meet these goals or shame on you. It's really about let's start work and let's get to work, and then let's maybe readjust those goals, because maybe once we get started on it and we really realize the synergy of everyone working together, maybe instead of 10 beds we really are going to be able to put out 30 beds of additional shelter and add in all these things that weren't in the goals. It's just a way for us to say the bus is leaving the station and you can be on the bus. We want you to be on the bus, and we want you to work your way through a process. So this is a 10-year plan. That means you can start on it as it's launched. You can jump on board next year or the year after that. We don't care when that is. We want people to participate in this as individuals or as groups or as a church all together to say, you know what? I love this one part of the plan. I feel a lot of passion around that, so I want to work on this.
Okay, the sun's starting to come up here in Central Oregon, and as you can see as you're watching us, we're here at webcasting live from Drake Park in Bend. Now, Cindy, this is such a broad look at our problem in society and what's driving homelessness in different sectors of society is different, and so it's such a big bite to chew off. For example, you're probably going to have to be dealing with economic development people, as we need to create jobs for men and women that have been homeless for the first time simply because they've lost their job and there aren't that many jobs out there. And then there's the component where kids are probably on the street because of substance abuse by their parents or themselves, and they were kicked out of their homes. So there is not a one solution fits all of the issues.
That's absolutely true. People are diverse, and the reasons that they go homeless are really diverse. And as you mentioned, for children, the predominant cause of homelessness for youth is abuse in the home, abuse or neglect, whether that's physical, emotional abuse. And I'm not saying, oh, they make me clean my room. It can be very challenging for youth. We have a lot of kids in this area that are 15, 16, and 17 years old where their parents are really struggling just to feed their family. So the kids feel a sense of guilt around that. You know, if I weren't here, my younger siblings could eat more, or perhaps their parents, in the stress at the times, are, the fighting really starts up more. I mean, we're human, and so the more we're stressed, the more fighting there can be, or inappropriate methods of coping. And so, the stress then on that child becomes greater and greater, and so they feel like, wow, maybe I can do better out there. And we know that kids' brains aren't developed till they're 24. Their thinking isn't going to be the same, and isn't the same as an adult. So their decision making maybe is not the most ideal. So they're just having these assumptions about, freedom out there on the street, I'll go out, I'll be able to make it. And they get out there and it's not what they expected. And it's the same thing for a family. You can have a single mom or a couple working, and it takes both incomes to support the family, and one person breaks their arm or they're sick for a week. And I've heard of families where their kids were in the hospital for a week or 2 days, and they're let go from their jobs. And there's the beginning of that spiral into homelessness.
And that can be quite a large bill. Medical costs are
absolutely
very high in these times. So how does the plan drill down and provide or recommend solutions for, we mentioned two specific areas, economic development to create more jobs, and then the problem with the crisis in the home. So does the plan just provide broad goals like create more jobs, or does it drill down a little bit more for more specific solutions?
It does drill down, but it also stays at the 5,000 foot range as well. And the reason for that is that even though we did talk to experts about each of these, so we did talk to economic development and we got feedback from that, we are not saying that we know it all. Often when you start on something, what you think is the way to accomplish something is not what happens when you have a group of very capable and very intelligent, out-of-the-box or linear thinkers. So I guess what we're saying is we wanted to set goals and have something at least to aim for, but we also wanted to leave room for people that work within those fields to say, you know what, I think we have a better idea here. Or something new can happen, and I've often seen that. When you're starting work on a project, you think it's going to turn out a certain way, but when you gather all of the creative abilities and the resources of an entire group of people, it can often look way different. So I hope, does that answer your question?
One of the things I'm excited about as far as being able to webcast the Project Connect is we would like to talk to people in real life situations, the folks on the street. What happened in your life? And I'm hoping that some people will share. I'm sure not everyone wants to go on camera and share their life on the internet, but I'm hoping a few do, so we can get a real good idea as a community, specific stories, because I think it helps define the problem a little bit more when you can look at somebody and it's, John Smith, and he worked at the lumber mill, and then he worked fixing cars, and now that's not available because there's so many mechanics out there looking for a job. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing some specific stories about specific lives and what that's resulted in. So that's one of the things we're excited about doing the broadcast so long from 9 to 4, because it gives us a chance to talk to service providers and then really, as I call it, drill down into specific lives and see what's going on.
And I think that's hugely important. And one of the things that I am hoping that people understand as well is that homelessness really is a poverty issue. Very few people go homeless when they're rolling in the dough, so to speak. When you're really comfortable and you have a really wide margin for error, when you have a lot of resources, 6 months worth of savings and assets in your home and etc.
You're not likely to live in Drake Park when you've got those kind of resources.
Exactly. And what we see and know to be true is that we have such a large segment of our population, the greatest segment of our population living in poverty since the Great Depression. So it's really a large percentage. And so when you're living in those lower levels of poverty, often it's very common to float in and out of homelessness, but usually the periods or episodes of homelessness only last maybe a couple of weeks or a month, because you've got a family you can stay with for a couple of weeks while you're getting that next job, or you've got somebody that can float you alone, or you've got connections where you're able to get into that next job because you've heard it from your friend. So we forget about not only what makes a person or a family stable isn't just finances and their job, it's also their social connections through church or friends. We're able to access our friends' resources and our friends' connections. Our church can help us with food or comfort or directions or wisdom. So those all play into what helps stabilize us as a person and as a family. And when you're in lower poverty, sometimes if you're going to your family too much, you tap them out, or they are living in poverty and can't help you. So there's a lot of dynamics to that. And so I want people to be really clear about the fact that it is primarily people that were living in poverty that are dipping into the homelessness.
And we have somewhat of a perfect storm developing as we speak, because it is easier to live on the street in Bend, Oregon during the summer, but we're coming up to the winter. And typically it gets very cold here in the winter, and we've got more people that are homeless. Some of them probably will leave the area because they're not used to surviving Central Oregon's winters in their car or outdoors. So we have a bit of a perfect storm coming up this winter, and one of the things that I'm concerned about, I'm sure a lot of people are, is what's going to happen this winter.
Yeah. We go through this each winter. It's a heartbreaking time for us in the fields, especially because every year, I don't want to say every year because there have been some years this has not happened, but most years we have someone that ends up in the hospital or dies from hypothermia.
Or loses arms or legs or fingers or toes.
Exactly. So it's not easy living outdoors at any time of the year. You're looking at sleep deprivation. You know, I have trouble when I travel and I'm in a new place, let alone camping, being able to sleep at night. So imagine if you're in a place where you're very vulnerable to strangers. You're stressed out because you don't know what you're going to eat the next day, or are you going to be able to maybe you've got your kids in there with you, so what is that like? And so you're not able to think as clearly as you normally would, and often there's also malnutrition setting in, dental that needs to be treated, and it's beginning to have systematic effects on your body. And so you're already compromised by the time you're outside anyway. So then as that outdoor living goes on and on, you're more and more compromised. And so it becomes a really tough time. And we don't have the shelter. I don't care what people might think. We do not have the shelter beds. It is not something where somebody can just say, if they would just get a job. There aren't the jobs either. It's not just a matter of, get off their lazy duff and get a job. It's not a matter of, well, if you just go to a church or you just go to the Bethlehem Inn or Shepherd's House, you could have a place to stay. That is absolutely not always the case. And Bethlehem Inn and Shepherd's House and the other shelters do amazing work. Amazing work. The Loft, those are my heroes, and they'll do everything they can, including piling people in when the weather's exceptionally cold.
Letting them sleep on the floor on mattresses and so on.
Absolutely. Sometimes on the floor with no mattresses.
Yeah.
Just on the floor.
At least it's warm.
Yeah. But we're still not able to help everyone, and not everyone knows to come and talk. Where do you go? Especially if people go, oh, go to that church. They'll give you a hand. Well, what if you don't get there until after they're closed? You are now on the street that night. And so I have had that happen where we weren't able to find women with children a place to stay that night.
And simply had to send them down the road.
Have to send them down the road. And that sounds absolutely horrible, and it is horrible. I've spent nights awake wondering what people were doing, how they were faring, and we're faced with real moral dilemmas around that, because do you bring a complete stranger into your home? Great questions.
Yeah, am I my brother's keeper? Is it, some people are saying, well, there for the grace of God go me, but it's not my family. And I've heard people say, well, and there are some people that are concerned that there's a fear mentality there about, if the economy gets so bad, I might be homeless, and so I want to hang on to my resources for me.
Yes.
It's kind of a self-preservation thing as well.
It is.
One of the things that was kind of interesting to me is part of the regional 10-year plan to end homelessness has some goals in there for prevention. Not only let's see if we can fix the problem, but how do we kind of prevent it from getting so bad in the future?
And that's really true. That's probably the major portion of this, because it's much easier to prevent something, and it's cheaper to prevent homelessness than it is to try to assist someone after they go homeless. So, the average family, once a person or a family has gone homeless, it takes between 6 to 8 months to get them back into stable housing, and it takes somewhere between $6,000 to $8,000 on the average as well. So it's much easier to help with rental assistance or to help someone with their utility bill so they're not having their utilities shut off, which then means they're often evicted for that. We have all of that built into this. It's easier to make sure that somebody's got their ID when they're discharged from foster care. In the past, kids have been discharged from foster care without birth certificates, and there is no way to get a driver's license or ID without your birth certificate. So you cannot get a job. You cannot, often cases, most of the time, go to the doctor. You cannot obviously have a job or get an apartment. So you're stuck. And so that's a component still of the foster care, especially kids that would be here from outlying areas rather than our Central Oregon area. We have components in here for, as you had mentioned before, for economic development, because a good job, a family wage job, is important, and that means not minimum wage. And in our area, for the cost of living, you need to be making $16 an hour if you've got a family of 4 in order to be stable. So a family wage job, I know some people say it's $12 an hour, and that may be the case if you've got 2 parents. Maybe one isn't able to work, and maybe one child. But if you have a family of 4, somebody in that household had better be making at least $16 an hour, and that's bare minimum.
And there's not a whole lot of $16 an hour new jobs being developed right now in Central Oregon, any that I'm aware of. Or
No.
if there are, it's very few.
And that's true. So those are the realities. And somewhere in there, we can look at this and say, this is completely overwhelming. But
That's the first reaction.
yeah, it was mine too. Sometimes it still is. I still sometimes think this is completely overwhelming. But we're not trying to bite off the whole chunk at once. What we're saying is that there are small goals that we know we can do. They're low-lying fruit. There are things that we can absolutely accomplish within 6 months to a year. And then there's things that we know for sure, 100% for sure, we can accomplish in 2 years. And then there are things that we believe that we can accomplish in 3 and 4 and 5 years. But if we don't start moving forward, and if we don't start working together, we're going to get nothing. We're going to get more of the same or worse. And so there is a sense of urgency. There is a sense of we need everyone. We need everyone who has passion, everyone who has the ability to be a mentor, everyone who understands housing or is on a city council and can help with zoning and has city planners. We need everyone, and that's the point of being a community.
Okay, Project Connect. Once again, what's the time? And it's going to be at the Deschutes County Fairgrounds.
Saturday, September 24th at 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock is when the doors open.
And we'll have a chance during that webcast to talk. You're going to be there as well,
yes.
Right? We'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about details of the plan, talk to specific service agencies about what their need is. Some of them have 50% increase, some have doubled. Talk to food banks as well, and then hear some of the case examples of people that are challenged financially right now, and that's why they're homeless and really in need. So quite frankly, I'm looking forward to that day because we have a chance to talk all day to people.
Yeah, we're looking forward to you being there as well.
Okay. Cindy, if people have questions for you, or this isn't available for release to the general public yet, is it?
Yes.
It is?
It is.
How can they get a copy of it?
They can get a copy of it on Project Connect page, which is www.projectconnectco.org. There's a copy there. There's also a copy of it on the Deschutes County website. And I don't know the web address for that.
You do a Google for that.
Yes.
Cindy, looking forward to Project Connect and being there, and thank you for being with us on this
bet.
beautiful sunrise here in Drake Park in Central Oregon.